Netflix's The Haunting of Hill House is probably one of the best horror shows out there that you can possibly watch. I know, that's a hell of a statement to start a video with, but it's true. Sure, maybe the competition is not that tough, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the show is actually amazing. Like, I think that the best way to explain how the show is so much better than its counterparts is just going through some elements that I believe that the show does absolutely right. Basically, this show nails mystery, acting, editing, camera work, subtlety, pacing, suspense, atmosphere, imagery, and most importantly, it nails something that anything horror related has to accomplish, and that is to introduce you to concepts that make you genuinely scared of turning off your lights at night. But before I tell you how the show affected me and made me scared of going to bed, I guess I better go through some of the elements I just mentioned and tell you why I think that the show does them so well. Let's start with the mystery, shall we? So, even though the plot of the show is fairly straightforward, it's just people being haunted by ghosts because they moved into this weird old house.
Hill House.
It's actually much more engaging than you would give credit to. Even though it's fairly straightforward, because the plot is split between the characters as kids when they first move into the house.
Alright, guys.
Whoa, that's so cool.
This is it.
Huge.
And later on as adults, it leaves you hanging every episode trying to figure out what happened in the house when they were kids to leave them experiencing what they're experiencing now as adults. I know, that is probably not the most in-depth I could get into the mystery of the show, but since the show is really focused on that core mystery of what happened in the house as they were kids, if I were to get into any more detail, that kind of would have ruined some of the suspense created by the show. So instead of doing that, I'm just gonna move on to another element that keeps making you press that watch the next episode button in Netflix, and that is the acting. Everybody in the show is bringing in their best performance. It takes you almost no time at all to understand who the characters are, what they're like, and what their relationship with each other is. And I don't mean that in a way that these characters are kind of one-dimensional, that's why it takes you no time at all to understand who they are. No, it's actually quite the opposite. You can see these people in real life. Hell, you probably know some people that will remind you of these characters, which is really useful when you're making a horror show, because if you relate to how the characters are acting, it makes you genuinely worried of what might happen to them. And it's not just the adults that are really good either. Even the kids bring in their best performance in this show. And trust me, the fact that I'm saying that child actors are doing a good job at acting should mean a lot about their acting skills. Because trust me, I am usually not forgiving at all about bad child actors. I am actually quite mean to them, and maybe I should stop a little, but I don't have to worry about that in this show because these kids are genuinely good. And as far as the editing, camera work, subtlety, pacing, suspense, and atmosphere go, well, they're all used together to keep creating this nice sense of unease that the show keeps giving it to you. The way that the pacing goes along, since it's so intentionally slow, it makes every other scene of suspense so much more palpable. Even when watching the show for a second time, I still kept finding myself getting nervous of what was coming next. Even though I knew what was coming, it didn't matter. The deliberately slow pacing of the show really makes you feel like you're in the same exact room as the characters and well, with whatever else might be there with them. I mean, who knew that turning a doorknob back and forth was such an effective way to get me to the edge of my seat? And the camera work and the editing, just perfectly enhance that sense that something bad is coming in the next corner. The fact that the show usually has the camera follow the characters from behind leaves you with a lot of blind spots, and your brain basically just fills those blind spots with the worst things that it can possibly imagine. Basically, the show uses your own sense of anticipation against you. It knows that if it doesn't cut away from that dark hallway a little longer, it's gonna create this weird sense of lingering inside of you, and you're just gonna be worried that something is just gonna pop out from that little hallway. Even if nothing does, it doesn't matter. What you're scared of is not the scare. What you're scared of is having to sit there and wait. And even when the show cuts away for something that is supposed to be safe, it doesn't matter, because thanks to the atmosphere that the show creates, you're still nervous for the characters, because the show clearly shows that no matter where the characters go, whatever is in the house is coming with them.
Sorry. We all just need a little help sometimes, right, Millie? Millie. Philly.
And that reminds me that I probably should talk about the great imagery and concepts that the show has. The proper way to really talk about the imagery that the show uses is just by saying that is damn effective. Even though you've seen a lot of TV and movies with ghosts in it, the imagery that the show uses is still quite haunting. But you're not really scared of the ghosts. No, and the show knows that. What you're actually scared of, it's more the idea that this thing is just there, haunting you, waiting for you. You can't run away from it, you can't move away, you can't have an exorcism, you do not know what this thing wants from you, and it doesn't matter, because probably the only thing that this thing really wants is you. What I'm trying to say here is that sure, the imagery may be effective, but what you're really scared about is the concepts that the show explores. Like, some of the things that happen to these characters are just awful. I am glad I never have to experience anything like that. Just thinking about what happened to some of these characters is making me feel uneasy and nervous, which is all I can possibly ask for when watching a good horror show. The nice feeling of uneasiness and anxiety. That's all I really want. And the fact that almost every other episode of The Haunting of Hill House from Netflix gave that to me, it's probably a good sign that the show is probably one of the best horror-focused TV shows you can possibly watch right now. And you should definitely do it. I mean, it's better than wasting your time with The Walking Dead.